What is up, my dear audience? It is your favorite pixelated professor here, yours truly, the 8-bit academic. Once again, I bring you your regular fix of gaming history with a sprinkle of random facts ranging from the educational and insightful to the weird and strange. And the latter part could definitely be the best description regarding today's video game showcase and today's topic. The game I have chosen to showcase here today may look old school and like something that would have appeared in the dark corner of your local video and gaming rental store back in the 90s under either the PlayStation 1, Sega Saturn, Dreamcast or Nintendo 64 section, but do not be fooled, my dear viewer, for even though this game may look retro, it was in fact released in the year 2018 for modern consoles and operating systems. The game I of course am speaking of is called Paratopic, and was developed under a really small budget by indie game developer Arbitrary Metric. The game features a 32-bit mid-90s 3D art style to give it that sweet addicting dose of nostalgia, and next to last week's Drowned God Conspiracy of the Ages is probably another one of the weirdest games I've ever played. But even though it technically isn't a retro game, I chose to showcase it here because I personally think it's a neat little gem, but also because it kind of fits into today's topic. But before I move on to that, Paratopic is essentially a walking simulator, similar in concept to games like the Stanley Parable, Firewatch, Soma, The Invincible, and Dear Esther, where the basic idea is you move around in the game world and look at all the pretty things, or terrifying things in the case of Soma. The game is presented as short gameplay segments with stories that connect vaguely to each other, that frequently and abruptly shift. The narrative is shown out of order in game, so I don't even know how to explain the plot to all of you because this game is pretty confusing. Not just that, you can finish this game within the space of maybe 10 to 30 minutes, and there's no save option either because the game is so short. All I know is that the plot has something to do with these strange contraband videotapes that one of the characters smuggles out of the country. People talking gibberish, this guy with the creepy shifting facial features, this weird meat flower head lady,
Jesus Christ,
this assassin shooting this random dude, I guess, bird watching, lots of driving.
Oh yeah, no, it's a goal, you know, a yeah, it was wall and color account of Calhoun and a goal to
and whatever the this is. Oh, and there's one random jump scare that happens out of nowhere and completely catches you off guard and makes you scream like a little girl. I have linked to a video down in the comments in case anyone wants to find out more about the game and what might be the actual story or lore about the strange world within which it is set. because believe me when I say, my brain hurts too much trying to put all the broken puzzle pieces together to try and figure out what this game is actually about. I do know it involves some kind of in-game conspiracy and government cover-up, which leads me to today's topic, Stranger Things. I mean the Montauk Project. That's 2 conspiracy-based videos in a row recently. Boy, y'all are eating good lately. But then again, I am a generous God.
It's not the lash they fear. It is my divine power that I am a generous God.
So just now, I'm sure you noticed my mention of the hit TV series Stranger Things. And yes, that mention was completely intentional because while Stranger Things was a really good fucking show, did you know that its central themes were based on an actual real-life conspiracy theory? Take my hand, dear viewer, as I take you on a journey down a pretty crazy and deep rabbit hole. The conspiracy theory that the hit Netflix show is based on is the aforementioned Montauk Project, an alleged series of secret United States government projects that were conducted at the location of Camp Hero, or better known as Montauk Air Force Station in Montauk, New York. The area gets its name from the Montaukett tribe, an Algonquian-speaking Native American tribe that occupied the area before and sometime after European contact. After a series of wars and skirmishes that involved both the European settlers and rival Native American tribes, namely the Montaukett and Narragansetts, throughout the 1600s, both the settlers and tribesmen were able to come to an agreement of some sort, and the land was shared, but with certain restrictions being placed on some of the settlers to not encroach upon Montaukett-owned territories, such as nearby forests and their own homelands. However, these arrangements would also be subject to change and various trade agreements over the course of history from the 1600s to the late 1800s. During World War II, the United States Navy bought most of the east end of Montauk Island to turn it into a military base. The US Army established Camp Hero in order to protect New York shipping lanes. Several concrete bunker observation posts were also built along the coast, including one immediately to the east of Montauk Lighthouse. Base buildings were disguised so that they would appear from above as a New England fishing village. Later, however, in 1957, the Army closed Camp Hero and was taken over by the United States Air Force, which in 1958 built a 100-foot wide, that's about 30 meters, AN/FPS-35 radar. A massive building was erected nearby to house its computers and electronics. Sometime though in the early 1980s, a few strange reports and claims began to circulate regarding the area and the various military bases that were established there in the middle of the 20th century, as well as that large radar system. Claims of secret experiments that involve contact with extraterrestrial beings, time travel, teleportation, and mind control that are sometimes connected to the CIA's MKUltra experiments, as well as connections to the Philadelphia experiment and the alleged fake moon landings. At this point, it's starting to look like one big conspiracy pizza with all your favorite government cover-up toppings. Also, look out for future videos on the Philadelphia experiment and MK Ultra. Those are going to be exciting. Anyway, back to the fun stuff. The crazy thing about all the conspiracies surrounding Montauk Point is that almost all of it is attributed to two men by the names of Preston Nichols and Peter Moon, whose real name is apparently Vincent Barbaric, and the third-party individual who seems to be simply jumping on the bandwagon because he wanted to be a part of the Cool Kids Conspiracy Club by the name of Stuart Swerdlow. In 1992, Preston Nichols and Peter Moon wrote and published a book titled The Montauk Project, Experiments in Time, which became quite the hot topic of that era. Their book cited the previously mentioned Philadelphia experiment, which briefly was an alleged secret World War II project where the military teleported an entire Navy destroyer battleship complete with its crew from a naval shipyard in Philadelphia to Norfolk in Virginia and back, with the crew having suffered some severe side effects as a result of the failed teleportation. Some of them even died and completely went missing. According to Preston and Moon, or Barbaric, whichever one you prefer, they wrote the book and its sequels, of which there are 3 more in total. Talk about capitalizing on the moment, based on their alleged repressed memories of having been test subjects when they were children at the secret Montauk base, where they arrived after having been kidnapped sometime in the mid-20th century and being forcefully involved in experiments regarding time travel, telepathy, and psychic abilities. According to their extremely tall tale, it all started with the previously mentioned Philadelphia experiment in 1943, which after its failure, the US military decided to continue the project, which was called Project Rainbow, with the remaining scientists that survived the initial experiment's failure. A report was supposedly prepared and presented to the United States Congress and was soundly rejected for being considered far too dangerous. So another proposal was made directly to the United States Department of Defense, promising a powerful new weapon that could drive an enemy insane, inducing the ability to cause said potential enemy to suffer from symptoms of schizophrenia at the touch of a button. So instead of killing you, it gives you lifelong crippling mental disorders. Without congressional approval, the project would have to be top secret and secretly funded. When the Department of Defense finally approved, the funding supposedly came from a cache of Nazi gold recovered from a train that was worth $10 billion, which was found by US soldiers in France during World War II. The train was then blown up and all the soldiers involved were killed. When those funds ran out, additional funding was secured from ITT and Krupp AG, which were weapons manufacturers for the Nazi army in Germany. Work on the top secret Mega Ultra undercover project began at Brookhaven National Laboratory on Long Island, New York, under the codename Phoenix Project. But it was soon realized that they required a large radar dish for experimentation, and installing one at Brookhaven would compromise the security of the project. Luckily for the evil scientists involved, the US Air Force had a decommissioned base at Montauk, New York, not far from Brookhaven, which had a complete semi-automatic ground environment radar installation. The site was large and remote since Montauk was not yet the tourist attraction that it is today, and water access would allow for equipment to be moved in and out undetected. The project was then moved to Camp Hero at the Montauk base in the late 1960s, and they set up shop in an underground bunker beneath the base. According to conspiracy theorists, to mask the nature of the project, the site was supposedly closed in 1969 and donated as a wildlife refuge park, with the provision that everything underground would remain the property of the Air Force, although in reality, the base remained in operation until the 1980s. Experiments began in earnest in the early 1970s, and during this time, one, some, or all of the following are claimed to have occurred at the site. The facility was expanded to as many as 12 levels and several hundred workers, without anyone in the town noticing the tons of building materials or hundreds of workers required. Some reports have the facility extending under the town of Montauk itself. Homeless people were supposedly abducted and subjected to huge amounts of electromagnetic radiation. Very few of them survived. People had their psychic abilities enhanced to the point where they could materialize objects out of thin air. Stuart Swerdlow claims to have been involved in the Montauk Project, and as a result, he says his psionic faculties were boosted, but at the cost of emotional instability, post-traumatic stress disorder, and other issues. Experiments were conducted in teleportation as well. A porthole in time was created, which allowed researchers to travel anywhere in time or space. This was developed into a stable time tunnel. Contact was made with alien extraterrestrials through the time tunnel, and technology was exchanged with them, which enhanced the project. This allowed broader access to hyperspace. An alien monster traveled through the time tunnel, destroyed equipment, and devoured researchers. The tunnel was shut down and the creature was destroyed. Do you see that connection to Stranger Things? Mind control experiments were conducted, and runaway boys were abducted and brought out to the base, where they underwent excruciating periods of both physical and mental torture in order to break their minds. Then their minds were reprogrammed. Many were supposedly killed during the process and buried on site. On August 12, 1983, the Time Travel Project at Camp Hero interlocked in hyperspace with the original Rainbow Project in 1943. The USS Eldridge was drawn into hyperspace and trapped there. Two men, Al Bielek and Duncan Cameron, both claimed to have leaped from the deck of the Eldridge while it was in hyperspace and ended up after a period of severe disorientation at Camp Hero in the year 1983. This is all part of the aforementioned Philadelphia project. Here they claim to have met John von Neumann, a famous physicist and mathematician, even though he was known to have died in 1957. Von Neumann had supposedly worked on the original Philadelphia experiment, but the US Navy denies this to this day. Staff from the Camp Hero site traveled to the USS Eldridge and shut down the generators, causing the ship to return to Philadelphia Naval Yard in 1943 and causing the time tunnel to collapse. Metahumans, or rather Humans 2.0, with updated patches and fixes to run better in the current version of the global simulation, were apparently created at these secret labs, along with special serums to create more of these upgraded humans. After the experiments were completed, or the destruction of the facility, depending on which book you read, the facility was closed for good, and everything was shut down. All the staff were brainwashed, assassinated, or sworn and intimidated into absolute secrecy, and all records destroyed. According to some stories, however, research continues at the site to this day with enhanced security and secrecy. But wait, there's more, my dear viewers. In the follow-up books to the Montauk Project, Experiments in Time, there are other alleged covered-up projects and experiments that took place at Camp Hero, such as filmmakers being brought to the facility to begin work on a project that would culminate with the moon landing hoax. The military personnel in charge apparently were in fact cultists who built a 50-foot, 15-meter ziggurat or step pyramid out of titanium for some esoteric reason. Early work on implementing the internet and its implementation were undertaken there as well.
This is the internet. But how is it made? Well, it all starts here, in Australia, where it's mined before being transported using a special internet wheelbarrow to a factory for mixing. Smells delicious.
Nazi scientists from Operation Paperclip were involved in some of the experiments there also. Experimental flying saucer aircraft prototypes were created and shipped to other secret bases for testing.
Following the introduction of modifications which had been indicated by the results of full-scale tunnel testing of the Avro car at NASA Ames Research Center, a continuation test program was begun.
Bioengineering projects were undertaken there that eventually created the Jersey Devil. Black helicopters were manufactured and flown there. Nikola Tesla, whose death was faked in a conspiracy, was the chief director of operations at the base. Mass psychological experiments, such as the use of enormous subliminal messages and the creation of a Men in Black corps to confuse and frighten the public, were invented there also.
You know what? Can I see some identification?
Identification?
Yeah, I'd like to see some.
Will you feel responsible for the harm that will come from the weapon?
The weapon?
Will ID make you feel more comfortable? The weapon that will be constructed from the blueprints. Will it make you more compliant?
What are you talking about? What weapon?
The blueprints you decrypted.
I deciphered blueprints, but
Is it something you base trust on?
And just to top it off, the final cherry on top, according to these books, the AIDS virus was also created at the secret Montauk base. So basically, according to Preston Nichols and Peter Moonboy, all of the world's problems can be traced to Camp Hero and the Montauk Project. It's probably their fault why I bumped my toe this morning as well. Had to be some kind of foot control experiment that forced me to step in the wrong direction and stub my pinky toe on the edge of my bed as I was rushing to make it to the loo. Those bastards, may they rot in hell. Supposedly Preston Nichols had these revelations while working as a defense contractor specializing in electromagnetism and radar in the 1970s on Long Island, New York. While working as a radar technician, he discovered that he had been living a secret life at the Montauk Air Force Station, where he participated in the project that used radar to influence the moods of living creatures and also to influence the weather and even matter. Eventually, this research expanded into manipulating time itself, sending people into the past and into the future, and all of the other crazy things that I had mentioned earlier, which are documented in the books, which are apparently so well written that it's difficult for people to tell whether they are fact or fiction, leading many people to believe that it is an actual conspiracy theory, and that the events and experiments documented are based on actual happenings at this so-called secret base on Montauk Island. But to me, it just sounds like they wrote a really entertaining fanfic that ended up becoming a multiverse of all the popular conspiracy theories of the day. The conspiracy verse. It also doesn't help that there are other people besides Preston Nichols and Peter Moon that claim to have been involved in the Montauk Project one way or another, as well as also claiming it to be 100% true. One of them being the previously mentioned bandwagon rider Stuart Swerdlow, a self-proclaimed mentalist who has had contact with aliens and was also somehow involved in the Montauk Project at one point or another.
Hello! Greetings, dear humans, Earth humans. Greetings to you, our unconditional love to you all, Earth humans.
Hello, hello. We are the IL. We are the IL. We are the IL, and we would like to be of service to you today, if we can, in any form, in any way you wish.
This is Central Control. This is Central Control. Stand by. Central Control, this is Addy.
I can't do this anymore.
And another named Albelik, who according to himself is an interdimensional time traveler, who, you guessed it, was also involved in the Montauk Project, since he somehow made it from the year 1943 during the Philadelphia experiment to the year 1983 and ended up on Montauk Island. Oh, and believe me when I say, there are a bunch of people besides these two that I have mentioned here that claim to have been involved in the Montauk Project in one way or another, either as experimenters or as test subjects, including another man named Duncan Cameron, who I also mentioned earlier, who is apparently best friends with Al Bielig and who went on the same time travel road trip together. What makes their stories kind of sus, however, is that all of these claims only surfaced around the time of Preston Nichols and Peter Moon's book release related to the said secret military projects at Montauk Point. Talk about desperately wanting to be part of the club.
I don't know what I'm doing here.
Despite how wild a lot of the claims in these books may sound, there does seem to be a small grain of truth, or at least an extremely weak and disjointed connection to some form of truth, and that is the previously mentioned MK Project, which was an actual secret CIA program that ran from the early 1950s to the mid-1970s that involved attempts at utilizing mind control through the use of various drugs and psychedelic substances like LSD, which did actually cause lifelong issues among many of its test subjects, who were sometimes unwilling participants in that they may have been forced against their will or just not informed about the nature of the experiment, or even had no knowledge that an experiment was taking place to begin with. There are also cases of the US military and intelligence agencies experimenting with things like telepathy, remote viewing, psychic abilities, and at one point even attempting to use the Force from Star Wars. Like, these are actual projects that the US government spent money on during the height of the Cold War in an attempt to gain a win against the Soviets. Go watch the movie starring George Clooney called The Men Who Stare at Goats, which is based on the so-called 1st Earth Battalion, which was a ragtag group of army officers that attempted to use their psychic abilities to kill goats by simply staring at them, believing that if soldiers could be trained to unlock their latent psychic and paranormal abilities, they could neutralize targets on the battlefield without even firing a single shot. And as ridiculous as it sounds, the US Army actually went along with it and spent millions in US taxpayer money to fund the project as well. If you have any reason to hate the government even more, it would be that they spend massive amounts of your tax money on ridiculous shit like this.
Is the president of the country coming to this NEC meeting? He's not yet arrived.
I just arrived.
Is the president coming?
I just arrived.
Is the president coming?
I just arrived.
When last did you speak to him?
I just arrived.
When last did you speak to him?
I just arrived.
But anyway, to conclude today's topic, while the crazy claims made by Preston Nichols, Duncan Cameron, Al Bielig, Stuart Swerdlow, and Peter Moon aka Vincent Barbaric, among many others, may have found their initial inspiration due to the insane secret programs run by the US establishment throughout the Cold War such as MK Ultra, there also seems to be some dark secrets attached to some of the individuals who are related to this conspiracy. According to some online forums, both Swerdlow and Nichols were not only involved in multiple cases of fraud and manipulation, with Swerdlow being accused of being a con artist, there has also been numerous accusations of sexual misconduct and abuse leveled at both of them as well, with many of their victims seemingly being young men. Swerdlow himself allegedly claiming that he apparently diddied over 300 boys who were involved in the Montauk Project as test subjects. And Preston Nichols supposedly forming some type of a cult which predominantly featured young men as members, where he would help them overcome their trauma from being experimented on as test subjects for the Montauk Project, something that he managed to convince them of, even if in reality their real trauma may have been related to childhood abuse or mental illness. During these deprogramming sessions, as they were called, he was accused of taking advantage of these young men in a sexual manner.
Now, you two, on with your training.
Yes, sure.
As you know, I'm a man of special needs. You will now receive the Fist of Fury.
As for the rest of the Montauk maniacs, they have also been accused of being liars, swindlers, con artists, plagiarists, and frauds. But of course they are. If you're going to come up with a conspiracy theory, trying to cram all the other ones into one big melting pot is not the smartest thing to do. It makes you seem like you're trying too hard to get everyone's attention, and it's a clear sign of a lack of creativity as well. Also, stop trying to steal other people's conspiracy theories and claiming them as your own. Either put in the work and create your own unique one, or get the f*** out. But anyway, now you more or less know where the hit Netflix show Stranger Things got most of its inspiration from. A bunch of bullshit dreamed up by a group of insane, creepy and depraved men. I will link to 3 other videos down below that cover the conspiracy of the Montauk Project in greater detail, from channels like the Y-Files and Decoding the Unknown, if you want to know more. That's all for today from me, folks. Until next time, peace.
My name is Marcus Samuel L.E. I am from the Yael civilization, an extraterrestrial race, far in the stars if you want, from your perspective. But we are already here, right now, in this moment, together with you, Earth humans, in this form of transmission, so to speak.